Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Ask Dave. This is a question that comes up rather frequently, and I think I've sort of answered it in various ways, but maybe we'll do it in more concentrated form here. The question is, how do I listen to music? What are my modalities? And as a subset, what do I listen to music? The dreaded audio equipment. Talk about that thing. Well, I've said a million times, I will not discuss audio equipment. I don't care. It's not important. It doesn't matter. What matters is how you listen to music on your audio equipment. You're not going to get any ideas from me. Everyone's got their own taste, and I am not getting into a folderol with the audio crazies about what equipment is this or what is that. Or I went through all of that, and trust me, just trust me when I tell you, it is not worth the aggravation. If you are an audiophile and you really care about equipment matters, go care and go find a group where you can scream about it with like-minded people. I am not one of them, but I will tell you this much, and I've said it before. I have multiple systems. I have a quasi-high-end system with custom-built speakers and expensive, amp and preamp and all of that stuff. I have my phone with my little earbuds. I have a bookshelf system. I have a decent sort of mid-range audio shelf thing in the overflow room. I have now a DJ setup with turntables and head-banging speakers. I have all of that. And I have a Sonos system because when I moved into this house, the people who lived here before me had a surround system in the walls of the living room. So I got that working. So and none of it is better than anything else. I really believe that. The important thing is to have music wherever you want it, in whatever way you can get it. And for me, that makes me happy. And what I think the bottom line about all of the sort of audio and environmental question comes down to is, for me, listening to music is not a ritual. It's just a way of life. I know people who have dedicated listening rooms with everything set up and a chair and a thing and and you sit on the spot and you let the music come at you in that particular way. And that would make me crazy because I'm just not that organized. I mean, I don't have listening sessions dedicated that way. Yes, when I want to hear something that I get that's new, as often or not, I'll just play it in my bedroom laying down in bed. Sometimes I'll play it while I'm reading a book. I don't have any set way of listening to music. I just want it there. And one of the things I've noticed, and here's a news flash for all you people out there. For me anyway, music is terribly distracting. It really is. When I'm listening to music, I can't really do much of anything else. I mean, yeah, I can do minimal housework. I like listening to music while I'm cooking. It's great while you're cooking. There are all kinds of ways you can, arrange to have music in your life while you're doing other things. But it also depends on what you're playing. If it's something that I really like and really care about, I have a very hard time doing anything else. And it doesn't matter what I'm listening on or how I'm listening. One of the best ways for me of listening is when I'm going to work on the train, because I've got a 2-hour commute in each direction, just about. And so just to plug in my buds, whatever those things are, and have, 4 hours a day of concentrated listening. Because what are you doing? You're sitting on your ass watching the train go by. It's not the ideal acoustic environment, but I'm really impressed by just how good a nice pair of Bluetooth earbud things sound. Sometimes you don't get the dynamic range, and low-level recordings, especially of classical music, are difficult. But boy, I mean, it's pretty damn good compared to the way things used to be. My old little Sony Walkman cassette thing with, a mono little earphone thing. I mean, I also have 4 different pairs of noise-canceling headphones. I've got all kinds of stuff. that's accumulated over the years. And I use all of it, when the mood takes me, that's all. And there are works where obviously you want to have huge dynamic range and gut-shaking bass and crystal clear treble and total lack of distortion. And actually, I think the most difficult instrument to record well is the piano, to be honest with you. I mean, piano recordings tend to be incredibly variable. And I listen to a lot of them because piano tone comes out well over speakers when you're walking or in another environment. You don't have to have that, whisper pianissimos and high, things like you do with orchestral works. So I listen to a lot of keyboard music, and piano music is very, very difficult to get right in whatever sound system you're working on. It really is. But anyway, so, music is just in my life. And my life is set up so I can access music wherever I happen to be for whatever reason I want to hear it whenever I can. Now, this does not mean that I spend my whole life plugged into something. I don't. I still regard music, actually, although it's not ritualized, as somewhat special, and I like to pay attention to it, like I said, when I'm listening to it. So there's that aspect too. But that's the technical aspect of it, and that's as deep and as far as I think I can go. That's what works for me. I think actually it's a healthy thing if other people sort of adopt a similar approach, which is just to treat it as part of your normal life. I grew up with music as part of my normal life. My mother played it in the house all the time when she did housework and all that stuff. It was just there. And so I just have a familiarity and comfort with it without it having to be something like strange or unusual. That's the whole thing. Now, how do I listen to music? Not on what or when or where or what, but how. Like I said, music is really distracting. And what I look for, especially music I'm not familiar with, is something that just grabs my attention. I don't feel any need to pay ultra close attention to unfamiliar works. I think, frankly, that the music has an obligation to attract you, not the other way around. It's not our job to, make obeisance before the holy temple of music and sit there like, willing acolytes, expecting the divine word to come down to us from on high. I don't think that at all. I think composers have an obligation to their audience, to us as listeners, and the music has to engage us. If it does, I'm all ears. Now, there are times when I understand. I will miss subtleties. There are pieces that have, require, I think, some really intense, concentrated listening in order to ferret out the parts that are, ultimately rewarding. And that's fine. And I'm not opposed to that. I just do that less because you need to have the time. You need to devote the time and attention. And you have to have made up your mind that whatever piece of music you're listening to, it deserves, that kind of attention. And I'm always a little bit leery of it. I really am. That means, of course, that I am somewhat less interested in music in what for me are terribly difficult or unapproachable idioms. Now, that's for me. I don't have any problem. I don't consider, for example, 12-tone music to be unapproachable. So, some people, everyone will have their own definition of approachability. I can listen to, I think, some very gnarly avant-garde pieces, just the way I listen to everything else, and wait for it to reach out and grab me. Because at the end of the day, it's still got to do that. I think it's much easier rather than, giving yourself, a headache by pretending that you have to be totally focused and concentrated and shut out everything else in your life. Rather, listen to it more than once. If it doesn't strike you the first time, try it again and see if something doesn't grab you. Because that way, you haven't made such an investment that you get angry at it if it doesn't appeal to you, number one, because that happens. That happens. It happened. I'll tell you how it happened with me. I was really, I mean, it's really very, very, very funny. It was the Schoenberg Wind Quintet, possibly the most hideous piece of music ever written, or ever emanated from the human mind. It's just horrible. And I like Schoenberg, I really do. But this was supposedly one of his first pieces that used strict sonata form and classical idioms and all of that stuff in a 12-tone serial setting. And I don't care about that. I just care about what it sounds like. Well, anyway, so I listened to it and it sounded like total gibberish. And, 40 minutes or whatever it is of woodwind sonorities, atonal woodwind sonorities. I mean, that's pretty off-putting on the best of days, isn't it? I mean, really, it's like, so I had a Denon recording back in the days when CDs had indexing. Remember indexing? That was the ability to go to spots within a track. And not just having tracks. They got rid of it because nobody cared about it, but it was actually a pretty cool feature for the discs that bothered to do it. So this disc had indexing, and I said to myself, okay, I played it a couple times. I thought it was just horrendous, but I said to myself, I like more of Schoenberg. One of the determinations in how much time is whether I really respect the composer and enjoy other stuff. So I said, this can't be that difficult. I mean, I like his other things. I've gotten into them. So I can do this. And it was indexed. And the first movement, which was in strict sonata form, had first subject, transition, second subject. All of that was indexed. So I said to myself, okay. I said, Dave, you're going to get it. I'm going to listen to the first subject in the exposition, and then I'm going to skip over to the recapitulation and see if I can make anything of this. So I listened to the exposition like 30 billion trillion zillion times to the point where I could sing it in my sleep with every honk, squeak, toot, and screech that the ensemble was making. So then I got ready and I got all excited. I had my remote, and I index feature, and I zipped over to the recapitulation, and I didn't recognize a damn note of the thing. I realized looking at the incredibly detailed notes, that was because the recapitulation presented the initial tone row in Kankrazans, that is backwards and inverted, and I just said, oh, screw this. And I took the CD and I frisbeed it out my window. And I was in college at the time on a higher floor. I hope I didn't kill anybody as it went flying down into the courtyard. And that was the end of my encounter with Schoenberg's Wind Quintet. So sometimes it just isn't going to work. You can try all you want, and it's just not going to work. But, that is about as dedicated as I will get in trying to get into something that I find otherwise off-putting. You could follow it with a score. You could do all kinds of other things. I have boatloads of scores. You have seen my scores, or at least a lot of them. I've got rooms full of scores. I love looking at scores. Interestingly, I tend to prefer looking at scores not when the music is playing because it gives you more time. You can look at what catches your eye and stop and study and think and look whereas when it's happening in real time, you got to keep moving. You have to keep going as the music is going. And if you get lost and you got to find your place, it's very irritating. So, scores I use for reference, but not as an aid to listening. For listening, we have our ears. And that is all we need, our ears. I really, really believe that. One of the things that always sort of fascinated me or shocked me or dismayed me is just how little trust we have in our sense of hearing to give us all the information that we need. I think one of the biggest problems, quite frankly, in approaching classical music is, there's the time factor, which we've talked about a million times. You have to give it the time, and some pieces are very long. But it's the idea that you don't need some other form of stimulus. You just need your sense of hearing. And if you do that, if you pay attention to that, you will get all of the information that you could possibly want. It works really, really well. Your hearing is quite the organ. Your ears are amazing. It's a wonderful faculty. And it provides all of the information you need. You have to trust your hearing. I think that at the end of the day, if I had to say anything about how I listen trusting in the fact that I'll hear whatever I need to hear, and I'll understand it, and it will strike me as beautiful, and I will enjoy it. And it's always worked for me. It really has. One of the things that always shocked me, and that I felt was a sort of, lessening of our civilization was the music video. And that's also why I never liked classical music videos either. It's not just that classical music people tend to be not terribly photogenic, and it's no fun to watch, brass players drip perspiration out of their things and conductors sweat and make grimaces, and I find nothing appealing about that. I love going to symphony concerts and watching a whole orchestra, but videos, someone else's view of what you should be looking at, ugh, no, I don't like that. I don't like videos of opera productions. I'm not visual that way. And I always thought when MTV started coming out with rock videos, with music videos, it was because the music isn't interesting enough. It doesn't survive just being heard. And I think actually that's damaged popular music. The idea that the music has to accompany a visual image tends to detract from the necessity of making the music intelligible or moving or expressive or powerful qua music. One of the wonderful things about our classical music tradition is that it was created before electricity. I really believe that, because it focused on your sense of hearing and nothing else. You couldn't have this sensory overload we get. So when I say keep on listening, I mean keep on listening. That's how I listen. I use my ears. That may sound stupid or it may sound obvious, but I really, in my peregrinations through the universe of classical music, or music generally, most people don't really like music. They don't trust music. They don't trust their senses of music. They don't believe that there's enough there. And if you don't feel that way, you're never going to get it. I say that categorically. There is enough there. The great fear is that there isn't enough there, that we have to do other things to amuse ourselves while music is happening. See, I've never needed that. I don't need that. So that's how I listen. I listen to music for its own sake. I think that's probably the bottom line and the best answer I can give. So thank you for asking the question, and keep on listening. Take care.